Welcome into today's Dropping Dimes podcast. I'm your host, Matt Nost, and I am here to talk about everything Game 1, preview of Game 2, maybe a little what's going on around the association. It's been a coaching carousel the past 24 hours with Doc's immediately signing with the Philadelphia 76ers, and then who's going to fill what vacancy thereafter. But let's start with Game 1, a weird game. You know, the NBA Finals has a tendency to basically, or it's got a history rather, of injuries. It just does. I mean, look at last year. KD ruptures his Achilles. Klay Thompson blows out his ACL. And the series is completely different. And in no way is that some sort of asterisk for the Toronto Raptors. You play the team that's in front of you, and they handled the remaining Warriors and won that series. Congratulations, Toronto. You're the 2018-19 NBA champions. So this year, it's Goran Dragic goes down after playing about 14 minutes with a torn plantar fascia. Now, I have not seen how much of a tear it is, if it's just a partial, if it's complete, but I have heard he's able to put weight on it, and they have not fully ruled him out last I saw, which was 5-10 minutes ago before I clicked to start this, that he's not officially out for the rest of the series, but I'm not entirely sure how he comes back. Even if he does, he's going to be limited in the whole point. The effectiveness of Dragic in the playoffs has been the catalyst of their engine. He can drive. He'll throw lobs. If the lob isn't there, then he goes for an easy layup or a kick out. And he's been the engine of that offense. For a guy that didn't start in the regular season, was coming off the bench as their sixth man, you know, he's their leading scorer through the playoffs this year, and to lose him is huge. Now you're going to be relying on Kendrick Nunn, who has not played all that much in the playoffs, and during the regular season averaged 5, 6, maybe 7 points less than what Dragic has done in the postseason. It's not like it's impossible with Kendrick Nunn, but Dragic was in a nice rhythm. I mean, the Celtics had no answer for him. And you would think coming into this, at least I did, that the Lakers don't really have much of an answer. You're asking a lot of KCP and Rondo and Caruso to slow him down. So to lose Dragic is going to be just massive. Even if he comes in a limited, he's not going to be anywhere near the effectiveness. Somebody posted stats of the last person to get this was, I think, Joe Johnson during the playoffs, and he came back and he shot 25% from three, and it's just basically his shooting percentages were down overall, which is to be expected. You can't plant correctly. I've had an aggravated plantar fascia before, and I mean, you're walking around hobbled. It's not fun. I've had a few of the random basketball injuries over the years like that aren't some massive destructive, tear or blowing something out. And it's just a pain in the ass. I've had that. I've had jumper's knee, and a couple others, but the plantar fascia is just every step you take, at least I did, you feel the pain. Even with a custom orthotic in there, it's still not going to be anywhere near what it should feel like. So I don't know how you can effectively play with that. And you couple that with Adebayo is listed as doubtful tonight. After an MRI, it appears to be a neck strain. Who knows how severe that neck strain is? I can't find any more information other than he is listed as doubtful tonight. And then Jimmy Butler with his rolled ankle. He said he's playing regardless. I would imagine that's the case because he played, that the rest of that game. Even though it looked like, he was hobbling around for a big chunk of that. And I love it because we do the Betters preview show and, we'll will the Lakers win by 20 some odd points? Never. I don't see that happening. And then, of course, game one. But it was this perfect storm of fucking a million. I mean, if you go and look at the stats, it's a completely different Miami Heat team. They didn't shoot particularly well from three. They got crushed on rebounds. They didn't force as many turnovers as they've been forcing. They only forced 8. It was 8 turnovers to 8 turnovers at the end of the game. And Miami has been averaging 11, and the Lakers have been averaging 15. But the rebounds, not having Bam in there for quite a while, just crushed them on the rebounds. And that, coupled with the Lakers shot almost double the number of free throws that the Heat shot. Lakers shot 27, the Heat shot 14. So it's just about perfectly double. But when you look across the board, the Lakers shot really well, especially for them from three. They out-rebounded them. They got more blocks. They got more steals. They had more assists. They shot a better field goal percentage from the floor. And you have to credit the Lakers themselves for a lot of that. Their defense looked championship level. They were smothering the Heat left and right. But it's hard for me to give all the credit to the Heat just when Dragic goes down, Jimmy is hobbled, Bam is checked out of the game, and the Heat are now relying on Solomon Hill and Kelly Olynyk and Kendrick Nunn, who have not gotten much run in the playoffs, man. So it's tough to take away any real snapshot of what this series could be unless those two major injuries in Dragic and Adebayo are going to persist, especially for Dragic, which really sucks for him, man. He was going for one last long-term contract, having arguably the best season of his life, a late, postseason run, the team banging on all cylinders, and now his long-term health is in question. Even if you get the rest that you need for this to fully heal, there's a chance of re-aggravation of this, and that it could crop back up pretty consistently hereafter, which sucks. So I don't know exactly what to take away from this game other than if these health issues and concerns persist, then going into game 2, they're going to need Herculean effort from Butler and Hero and Duncan Robinson, and Iguodala is going to play heavy minutes. If you guys can still, there we go. I don't know. My internet went in and out apparently for a brief second there. The plus side of Olynyk is he's going to give you some 3-point shooting and extend out, but they'll put either Dwight or JaVale on him. And it's not like Anthony Davis is going to be guarding him. And even on the flip side, you're going to have Crowder or Olynyk on Anthony Davis. And that's a mismatch, even though Crowder can hold his own, just at least in the, you can't body him, you can't back him down straight away into the paint, but you need the length and athleticism to at least slow AD down, which Bam could give you. No one's ever going to, right now, Anthony Davis through this playoff run is averaging the second most in playoff history, just behind Jordan and just ahead of Allen Iverson. That's how good he's been so far through the playoffs. And, he's making a case. If he consistently does this, conceivably, you could vote for him for finals MVP if they close out. It'll be really interesting by the end of this because LeBron almost had a triple-double in the first game, but it's not like Anthony Davis was any slouch either. putting up 30 some odd points. He had 9 boards and 6 assists, I believe. And then you add in the defensive numbers for both those guys. Like it was, exactly as you would anticipate. The 2 best guys showed up in spades. And then after that, you got good production from KCP, from Danny Green, from Alex Caruso. So you had 5 guys in double digits, but it was the LeBron and AD show, full on. Like, no hesitation. It was their show, as it's been the entire rest of the time. And then they just got all the other players to fill in spots when they needed it, and they did beautifully. But I think the best thing that they can take away is their defense was stifling. But it's hard to know, as I just said, if that is really indicative of what this series would be if everybody was at full health. Because early on, I mean, heater up huge, and it looks like, they're blue collar, gritty, tough, grit and grind-esque mentality came ready to play and are not intimidated by the Lake Show. So if Adebayo can come back and he's healthy and the strain is just a strain and it's agitating, but he finds other ways to really help out the team. Jimmy increases his scoring load, but he's not forcing the issue. And Kendrick Nunn can fill in and do 80 to 90% of what Dragic was doing. Well, suddenly this series could be interesting again. If Kendrick Nunn looks overwhelmed by the moment because he's a young guy and Tyler Hero just gets worked again. Felt so bad for him, man. Every time he was getting, when he was in there and LeBron had the ball, LeBron is getting a switch to have Hero on him so he can run straight at him. He was getting, blitzed on offense. He looked slightly overwhelmed at times, and I think I'm being generous by that. He wasn't awful, but a lot of his stats came late in the game, just like Kendrick Nunn pouring it in late to end up having a decent game, but it was mostly in garbage time. It was pretty meaningless at that point. But if Nunn can give you just a facsimile, something close, akin, a copy of what Dragic was giving you, if you can get 80, 85, even 90%, it will make this series at least interesting. If he looks as overwhelmed as Hero did and plays like a young guy, sad as it is to say, the sweep is entirely conceivable. And no, I don't want to see a sweep. I want a 7-game. I don't really care who the winner is. I just want 7 games so we get more basketball, and it's more fun to watch more basketball than to go to the free agency. Is interesting for a couple days because everything is decided within the first 48 hours. And then you have the draft, but I don't follow college basketball, so I don't know. And by all accounts, this year's draft is pretty weak. So it's like, thankfully it'll be a shorter off season, but now they're going to push the start of the league till probably January. So before it was going to be a month and a half to a month and 3/4 off. Now it's going to be 2.5 to 3 months off, which is fine. The players need their rest, and they still got to do all the stuff that I just talked about with free agency and the draft. And you got to have training camps and bring the guys in and new coaches to institute their schemes on offense and defense. Like, you need time to do all that stuff. I'm understanding of that. I just don't want to lose basketball if I can help it. If we can extend out for another week, that would be pretty fantastic. But I'm not entirely sure what the Heat do. Because if Jimmy basically feels like he needs to put this team on his back, I just think that's anathema to who the Heat are or have been through the playoffs. I mean, he's had a game or two here and there, where he's just flat out gone off. We've seen it. Look at that Pacers series. But since then, as the pressure and the stakes have increased, it's been more about let's whip the ball around. Let's get all the different guys, in the mix. Let's get as many different shooters as we can going. So that way more people have confidence and we'll have more options to hit shots. And we don't have to rely on Herculean efforts from 1 to 2 players. Instead, we can have 4 to 5 threats out on the court at any given time. And if one of those guys happens to go off, it's their night, as opposed to this guy has to do it. And it's just, they don't seem to be constructed that way, especially within their mentality as what's been expressed through the media and through the way they've carried themselves on the court. So it'll be interesting. I mean, there's a quote from Jimmy saying basically everybody, thinks that you can do that to the Heat 3 more straight times, and you can't. And I agree with them. They have the personality of a team that is just not going to be run roughshod. Like they're not going to be taken out to just be destroyed. They just don't have that mentality. There's too much dog. There's too much fight in that dog. So will they be able to get one of these? Maybe if the Lakers, so if Bam comes back and he's back to full health, and once again, Kendrick Nunn is a close approximation, then yeah, I still think the Heat could. If Kendrick Nunn looks like a young guy and Tyler Hero keeps getting blitzed and doesn't have an answer for it, and Bam is not at 100%, boy, it is going to be super difficult for the Heat to do anything about it. And then what is going to stop Anthony Davis and LeBron James from getting their 25 and 34 points respectively, with 22 to 25 rebounds between the two of them and 15 to 20 assists between the two of them, and 4 or 5 blocks between the two of them, and 4, 5, 6 steals, and it's just, if you're going to be missing the key guys that you have leaned on the entire season, to suddenly now have, I don't know that there is an answer for those two, because if you don't have Bam in there to slow down AD, right? And AD gets going, and no one really has right now an answer for LeBron. It's just at his size, at his athletic ability, agility, and all the strengths that he has, plus his basketball IQ on top of that. There really is no answer. You can just kind of slow him down, but you can't really stop him. The same with AD. But if they're pouring it in like that, then it's super easy for everybody else on the team to get buckets when they can. So you need a catastrophic day from everybody else. And I liked initially what the Heat were doing early on, which is doubling LeBron and AD every time they got the ball. The zone didn't really work. They got picked apart. But you just need the Lakers' league average or worse 3-point shooters, which is what that team does as a whole. And it's crazy with Danny Green on there, but he is really falling off a cliff, to shoot like they've shot by and large the rest of these playoffs. And if you can't get that, if those guys are going to shoot, they shot mid-30s outside of LeBron and AD both went 2 of 4 from 3-point. And everybody else was 1 of 3, 1 of 4, 2 of 5 type of situation. I think Markieff Morris was the only one that had a 3-point percentage that was close to AD and LeBron. Everybody else kind of shot what you'd expect. Danny Green was in the upper 30s, but then it was a bunch of 1 of 3s, 1 of 4s. Sebastian over in the chat says, as a diehard Lakers stan, I'm hoping Bam and Dragic somehow pull through this to make the series competitive. So, That's what you want. If you're a genuine true fan, you want to beat the best team you possibly can. It's nice. It's a breath, you breathe a sigh of relief when the games are easy. Like, I'm sure that game 1 was fun to watch, being up by that much for the duration of the game. But if you're a truly competitive individual, you want to beat the best to know that you were the best. On some level, I wonder if the Raptors think about that in the back of their minds. They enjoy their championship, and rightly so. But that Warriors team was nowhere near who the Warriors were. So does that color your perception subconsciously as to how good you really are? Yeah, I don't know. Because I still had, I obviously, if you listen to the show or watched it, I had the Clippers making it just for the depth of the team. And it turns out that they were wildly dysfunctional. And some are attributing that to the bubble atmosphere itself. And guys were just disjointed and out of sorts and maybe around their teammates a little too much. They need time away to be effective. And they're just used to the regular routine and of their life. And this was such an anomaly that it's a unique environment. The Lakers were one of 2 teams, along with the Clippers, that voted to leave the bubble when the Bucks walked out of their game, early on. And here we are with the Lakers closing it on the end. And if they don't win a championship, something went, catastrophically awry. So Jeff Knutson writes, do you think the AD will stay with the Lakers? Yeah, I don't. Even if somehow the Lakers lost, I don't see how AD leaves. To win in LA means something different to basketball, players, just because of the history that the Lakers have. I mean, this is their 32nd finals run. 32nd. That's just bonkers. And I love to hear the Laker fans like the woe is me because they haven't been in the finals in a decade. And all the rest of us. I mean, it's been over 2 decades for me as a Bulls fan. And some teams have never made it. Some teams have never even sniffed the finals. And for Lakers fans, like, oh, man, it's been such a drought these last 10 years. Shut the fuck up. You have no idea what the rest of us go through. You fucking bandwagon, it's just the worst. Now, I do know some true blue Laker fans, and they've been Laker fans the whole time, and I've gone to games with them in this past 10 years when the lineups were so terrible and, outside of basketball fans, the average person could not name one person on that Lakers team. I saw a number of those live and in person, and I went with a couple buddies because they were still Lakers fans. And yes, there are those people, but there are more, casual, suddenly huge Laker fans in this town and across the country. And it is, it's like the Warriors bandwagon out of nowhere. Suddenly a third of the basketball country were Warriors fans. And you're like, trust me, can you even tell me about like the TMC Warriors? You know anything about them? Do you know anything about them or the history they've been through? Who's been their all-time leading scorer? It's like you can't. But I think for that reason, AD will stay because Lakers have an embarrassment of riches. And if you can solidify your legacy for this franchise, then it elevates your overall status. Even if you say AD wins 3 championships here, right? More people are going to be paying attention because it's the Lakers. So that memory will have a more lasting effect for the average person. So AD will loom larger in the minds of a casual basketball fan, as opposed to had he stayed in New Orleans that does not have the fan base or the collective consciousness of the public at large. So if he won 3 championships down there, I mean, it's the difference of Kobe and Tim Duncan. It's also 2 different personalities, but Duncan has just as many championships and was just as elite a player. They have two different personalities, and one craved more of the spotlight than the other did, but more people know about the accomplishments and accolades of Kobe Bryant than they do of Tim Duncan. Or you could even say Kobe's running mate Shaq. More people know who the hell Shaq is, what Shaq has done. Now, his gig on TNT and the fact that he's a spokesman for 75. I mean, that dude does not turn down a check, apparently. It just doesn't matter what it is. Icy hot, no problem. General insurance, cut the check. Just like, Jesus, man. I realize it's free money, but I don't know. Hold something back. But, get it while you can. I'm not faulting you. And it also, now after having him in my life for 3 decades, it makes a lot of sense. Or not quite 3 decades, but coming close. Anyway, so yeah, I think AD will stay with the Lakers. I think it makes all the sense in the world. But as soon as, technically he's a free agent, but he'll be signing a long-term contract. And kudos to the Lakers for giving up everything they could to get him, because it just made all the sense in the world. Anthony Davis, if you ever watched him play, most people hadn't because he played in New Orleans. It's like, dude, this guy is a center who's doing stuff that small forwards and two guards do and still has the attributes by and large of a center. Now, he doesn't like to bang with the centers, and I think ultimately that is very smart for him because it would reduce his overall ability to maintain health and stuff like that long term for his career. So I think it's the smarter move to try and not sit down low and take the pounding that you get. Although the NBA has shifted and there's fewer and fewer of those bruisers. So it's not like it was when he first came into the league, and even 5, 6, 7 years before that. You're not gonna take the barrage that you would have gotten 10 years ago to 15 years ago. But you still, like, what you see in the playoffs, you got more of that in the regular season 15 years ago or so. I mean, it was still nowhere near what it is in the playoffs. In the playoffs, you just get away with more because the refs rightly don't blow the whistle as much at contact because there's too much on the line. So just let the guys play unless it's a big egregious foul. Although there is still some ticky-tack shit. And I hope we don't see the lobbying and bitching and moaning in between when you don't get a call. Like, it's the finals, guys. Just take the hit, move forward. All right, so Sebastian, your next question, I'll get to that at the end. It's a Doc Rivers question. Gary Wilson puts in, do the Heat change the lineup and put Miles in starting and none? Well, none. As of right now, I don't know if Dragic is going to play or not. So none, I would assume, is starting. Bam is the big fat question mark as to whether or not he's playing. Jimmy will be out there. They have to change their starting lineup. I don't foresee how you can have Dragic out there when he is. What do you guys think? Say in the chat. What do you think his best case scenario percentage wise is? 50%, 60%, I think is ballpark. If you've ever had one of these, it hurts. It hurts like hell. And he's got a tear. I think I just aggravated mine. I don't even think I tore it. The worst one, side note, the worst random thing, I was doing a refurbishment of a house, like flipping a house type of situation. And I was down doing framing for like 3 straight days, just redoing, tore out some walls, redoing some walls, stuff like that, resituating. And I was down in a catcher's stance for hours on end working and pivoting between that and being down on my knees and stuff like that. And I got an affliction in my right foot that only happens to catchers. Like I went to the doctor and he was like, wow, this is something you really only see from, basically high school, college, and professional catchers because they're just down in that squatting stance so much. And I had a golf ball size, just welt on the bottom of my foot. And that was crazy painful. And eventually it went away. Just had to keep off of it for a while. But I've had a plantar fascia tear. Like that has nothing. The previous one, I don't even know what it's called, but I can't remember. But plantar fascia tear hurts like hell. Like you step on it and just like you have to, at least I did. I had to like turn my feet and you're trying to do this hobbled, like keep your weight off of it as much as possible. And you're telling me that a guy with that injury is going to be able to play at the highest level of this sport, the professional, the highest of the high. I just don't see how that's possible. Maybe they bring him back game 4 or something after he's had some rest. But even then, I think best case scenario, he's at like 70%. And that's me being generous. So I don't, they're going to have to make a switch. Boy, I hope, because I mean, what if the Heat win tonight? Like backs against the wall, the adversity. I'll look up right now while we're talking what the money line is for tonight. But backs against the wall. Nobody believes in them. Nobody, everything is against them. Let me see. It is. So the Lakers are favored anywhere from plus 375 to plus 434 over at Circa Sports, whatever that is. But this is with Westgate Superbook, MGM's book, DraftKings, Stations. They all have. I'm sorry, the Heat are plus 400, 375, 434, 390, 425. The Lakers they opened at minus 305, but they're all pretty consistently minus 500, even as low as 575. I mean, it's a full on. Lakers are favored by so much. It is utterly ridiculous. Right now, they're anywhere from a 7.5 to a 9.5 point favorite, according to Vegas. Caesars has them at 9.5. I mean, 9.5. So, I mean, that's straight blowout. That's no Dragic. If Bam doesn't play, that 9.5 is legit. If Bam plays and is healthy, it's a big fat if, because this injury seems like a re-aggravation of what happened in the Celtics series. Well, 9.5. But what if the Heat come out and win tonight, and then suddenly it's like okay, you guys underestimated us and overestimated your position of power, and we crushed you. I find that very unlikely. I mean, as evidenced by late in the game when the Lakers were celebrating a little too much, and LeBron chastises them in a timeout saying, this game isn't over, guys. You need to stay focused. You need to stay locked in. Championships are won and lost in these moments. And it was, they were starting to get sloppy, and the Heat were creeping back in ever so slightly. And it looked like, okay, maybe they can make this a game. The Lakers have stepped off their throat. But if they come in, I just think with LeBron being so dogged, having been here enough times, 10 times now, knowing exactly what this moment is, this is his 10th game 2. That last game 1 was his 50th game in the finals. 50th. I mean, it's pretty damn impressive. So if anybody can get his team mentally in the right headspace, it's him. He's been there more often than not. He knows exactly what this moment is. But So in the side, Jeff Knutson puts in, he thinks his Dragic would be about 5%. And Josh H says that foot injury is tough to play out. It feels like lightning. Yeah, it does. It feels like, just pain shooting through your foot every time you step down. If it's bad enough, it's just like, you try and stay off. That is there's no worse injury than, the best thing you can do for it is not use it. Because then it's, we have a rough, 4 to 6 weeks is the timeline, but it's a guesstimate. Everybody's body recuperates at a different, rate. So it could be 3 months. Who knows? What if it's just his body is slow to heal on this one? And there's also the problem with the feet. It's like from the microfracture surgery back in the day, what killed a bunch of centers and whatnot. The blood flow is less to the feet, so it takes longer for you to recuperate and to rehab, to bounce back from a foot injury, because the blood flow isn't as high there. So who knows? I just had to assume if I'm Eric Spoelstra in the Heat, we need to continue on as if Dragic isn't going to play another second for us, because even if we have him in there, he might hurt us much more than not playing him at all. The looming threat of him could be more effective than actually putting him in the game. And if I'm the Lakers, I just continue doing what I'm doing. Play the stifling defense. Switch anything and everything that you possibly can. They had a great numerous possessions in that last game where even Dragic was out, but Bam was still in the game. The Lakers were switching all kinds of different stuff. LeBron was calling out the potential offensive plays, and they were just swarming them. And with the Lakers, that's one of the superior advantages the Lakers have. They have length at all positions. So they're starting 5 when it's either, JaVale or Dwight. Pick your poison. Right now appears to be Dwight. AD, LeBron, KCP, and Danny Green. All those dudes are pretty damn long, or if not exceptionally long, for their position. So to make passes that you're accustomed to kind of doing, it's much more difficult, because they can just put out these massive wingspans into all the passing lanes. And if they're going to be making the effort to not reach on defense and shuffle your feet and try and get in front of the defender and do all the little things that, defense is about effort. So why guys get cheap fouls is when they get burned, instead of trying to stay in front of them, they just swipe with a hand once someone gets around. So if they're going to continue to exhibit that type of effort on the defensive end, which I would imagine they would, considering how effective it was, and you can just beat it into them in game 2. I'm just we need to keep up exactly what we did in the first. Whereas if their defense was, lacking in the first game, then it's guys, we have to try. What the shit is this? And you're almost, browbeating your own teammates. Not to say that can't work, but positive reinforcement more than likely works better for a millionaire than negative reinforcement, unless that negative reinforcement is for someone like AD and be this is legacy defining. Whereas for the average role player, their legacy is going to be, I won a championship or not I'm a Pantheon player. So I think the positive reinforcement would probably work better with your KCPs, Carusos, and whatnot. Anyway, so let's get back over to the side chat. Let's see. David Nishimoto says, if the Lakers shooting under 40% and the Heat can get good shots, they have a chance tonight. Kelly Olynyk should get more minutes. Kelly will get more minutes. There's no doubt about it. Because it's still unclear. Bam is still doubtful. But you're gonna need to get more than likely Bam his rest. So Kelly will be in there, or perhaps Solomon Hill, but Kelly at least gives you more 3-point shooting. They still need to do the things they did, limit their turnovers. They did 8 turnovers, but they need to get the Lakers to get to go back to committing 15 turnovers a game, their playoff average, because 8 is much closer to the Heat's 8 is much closer to their average of 11, whereas the Lakers' 8 is half of their playoff average of 15 turnovers. So you need to get the Lakers back up to that. You need to stop them on transition. They're the best team in transition. And you need to, as dumb as it is, you need to make your 3-point shots. Because that's where you have a superior advantage over the Lakers. Shots don't fall sometimes. It happens, especially in the finals. Teams can go cold. Or look at the Rockets. The reason that they haven't been in the discussion of conference finals and finals consistently is jump shooting teams, as much as Charles Barkley, chastised until the Warriors won, saying that a jump shooting team will never win a championship. It's more difficult. Even if you have all the superior talent at that, there's a reason that shot is worth more. It's a more difficult shot, and to do it when the pressure is ratcheted up as high as it can go is a skill set that is rarefied air. And the reason I liked the Heat coming into it with that kind of skill set is because they had all these young guys that it's a weird year. You don't have the normal pressures of having to travel or deal with an opposing team's fans. You don't have the massive media scrums. You don't have all the normal hoopla. So if this is one of the 1 year where your inexperience, in my opinion, isn't going to be as big a detriment as it would be any other year. And perhaps that comes back. Hero was a negative 35 on his plus minus. But I think he is young enough, and Jimmy and the rest of that team, their vets, are good enough to tell him, like, don't even remotely focus on that. We know, and you know what you're capable of. You need to move forward. Duncan Robinson, shoot the damn ball every time you're open from 3. I don't care if you go 1 for 20. You got to shoot that, because you're our best 3-point shooter, and you're arguably one of the best 3-point shooters in the league right now. And if he stays consistent with this, he will be in the course of 3 years. He'll be in the discussion of top 3 to 5. Taking over the mantle of JJ Redick and Kyle Korver once they retire. I would imagine Korver is very near the end, and Redick is probably 2 seasons away. I think max 3 seasons for Redick at this point. But my guess is next year he has a solid year, and it's the following year where he trails off ever so slightly and reduces his effectiveness overall and finally decides to hang it up. But with his skill set, so long as he's willing to put in the time and the effort on the training and all that, and he always has, he could continue to come in like off the bench and shoot threes. But Duncan Robinson, you could easily take over that mantle, but you got to keep continuing to shoot. Jay Crowder, you got to continue to shoot threes. You've shot wildly impressively throughout the playoffs, so far. That's what the Heat, if I was the Heat, just don't deviate from what has gotten us here. We will overcome the adversity of losing Dragic. None. Kendrick, now is your time to shine, and to prove to Spo and everybody else that you should have been starting through these playoffs, even though we made the finals with you as a non-starter. But, prove that we don't need to re-sign Dragic to a long-term contract, and you could take over the mantle. Boy, I hope this game is competitive. I mean, we're 5 hours away, and I literally don't have the slightest clue of what in the world is going to show up on the Heat side of the ball. The Lakers, we know exactly what it's going to be. I mean, it's death and taxes from the Lakers right now. 2 guys are going to give you 60 to 65 points, 20, 25 rebounds, 15, 20 assists, 5 to 7 blocks, 6 to 8 steals, probably 7 turnovers ish, and I'll say like 8 fouls. That's exactly what you're going to get from LeBron and AD. It's the rest of the team you don't know about. It's weird after all these rounds. They're in the finals. It's practically inconceivable that they won't win. And yet it's still although is Kuzma going to show up? Is KCP going to show up? Is Caruso going to show up? It's weird though. Caruso, I think, is the one that I kind of assume is the steadiest. Because Danny Green would have been. No, Kuzma. Technically he's their third leading scorer, but I still don't trust him if I'm a Lakers fan. KCP, he has a good game, then he has a bad game, then he has, by his standards, a great game, and then he has a bad game, and then he has a good game, and it's just this back and forth over and over and over again. Dwight didn't attempt a field goal in the first game. Didn't hurt him, but can you get away with being out there for the 15, 20 minutes that he'll be out there and not attempt a field goal? I don't know. Jake asks, Jake Cleveland, who do you think wins finals MVP? It's LeBron's to lose, but if AD continues to average the most points and get double-doubles if AD gets a triple-double or maybe even 2 triple-doubles, he's got a shot. It's LeBron's to lose. Because the narrative is so strong around LeBron, just like the regular season MVP, once the narrative is established. So I think it's LeBron's. David Nishimoto says, I cannot stand Dwight Howard. Basketball gods need to help the Heat, and I'm a Boston fan. Dwight can rub people the wrong way. That's for sure. All right, so let's go back to a couple other questions that we skipped over, and then we'll close this one out. So that's final stock. I mean, I don't see, for tonight's game, I don't see how the Lakers lose. Well, I don't want to say it like that. I think the Lakers are a prohibitive favorite to win, as evidenced by the 9.5 points from Vegas right now. I think the crux of it comes down to Bam. If Bam is healthy, suddenly the Heat are interesting. If Bam is off, and you'll be able to tell on the next strain, his shot won't be going down on these easy shots, then it's a question of, all right, well, then you need to make up for the 20 points that you normally give us on the defensive end and somehow slow down AD and or LeBron and take them from 30 and 20 to low 20s and teens. We'll see. But moving on. So Sebastian writes, thoughts on Rivers going to the Lakers? He likes Doc, but feels he's overrated, especially since the one ring he has, he was won more so due to the fact that he had the big 3 in Boston. Well, what Doc has proven, one of his best abilities is how to coach, just like Phil Jackson, how to coach stars and how to coach vets. Now, to some degree, someone like Matisse Thybulle, it's good that he already has a season under his belt, because if Doc had been there this season, who knows how much run Thybulle would have gotten and whether or not he would have come to the fore and been as impressive on the defensive end. But, a burgeoning solid role player for them. And who knows, in 2 seasons or something, he could be the next like Bam, a guy that started off I'm not saying they're equivalent players, but someone who started off like he did one thing really well and then kind of grew their game outward from there. And if Thybulle adds a more consistent 3-point shots and finishes at the rim a little better, his defense is already really good. But Doc to the Sixers, Sixers make more sense to me than New Orleans, and the Pacers. I'm not sure who the Pacers are going to go after, but apparently Ballmer did this against the wishes of the front office. But it's the second 3-1 collapse since Ballmer's been the owner. And according to, I think it was Shams or somebody else, said it was, previous history coupled with when they didn't take Michael Porter Jr., this is why he went against the front office. It was because the front office said that guy was never, in essence, going to pan out, and he wasn't worth the draft pick. And, God, when you have back-to-back in the mid-teens in the first round. It's like, why not take a flyer on a guy who, before he hurt his back, was in the discussion for the number 1 overall pick? That's when you have 2 picks. If you just had 1 pick, but then Denver, just like, screw it. Hell yeah, we'll take. He is by far the best available talent. So that's why, supposedly the reports are that is the case. I like, can Doc fix the disharmony between Joel Embiid and Simmons? I don't know. He's good at coaching outsized personalities. So, and stars want to play for him. It's part of the reason why Kawhi and Paul George sought out the Clippers, was because Doc was the coach. And I don't know if Kawhi's ever said that. His camp has, but I'm pretty sure PG has. And by and large, you'll have nothing but glowing stuff from the big 3. I mean, it's easy to knock Doc for some of his coaching and for some of his rotations and this, and he stuck with like Harrell. That was the big criticism, and didn't go with Ivica Zubac. But I think overall he's a good coach. So it's a solid signing by the Sixers. And now that domino, because it was D'Antoni's, by and large, it looked like he was going to be the front runner there. Just like, okay, well, where does D'Antoni go next? Is it New Orleans? Is it the Pacers? Do the Clippers kick the tires on this? I don't know. Because then you had them. Ty Lue is going to get meetings wherever he wanted. There's an assistant coach over in Minnesota that is going to apparently go down to the Rockets and take a meeting down there. There's going to be, a little bit of a carousel as the league figures out who goes where. But I don't mind Doc to the Sixers. So it should be interesting. Hector Gonzalez writes, why does everyone think Durant is coming back as dominant as he was before he got hurt? He's 32 and he ruptured his Achilles. Many have not been able to come back from that the same way. 100%. I hope, dear God, I hope the Slim Reaper, and I wish he would embrace that nickname, but I hope the Slim Reaper comes back 100%, man. He was establishing himself as the best player in the world, legitimately. I mean, that last year with the Warriors, he came in, seemed like from day one, he kind of wanted to win Defensive Player of the Year. He's still an offensive threat from legitimately anywhere on the floor. He's got a gorgeous handle. He likes the ISO a little bit more than most teams run the ISO. But at the same time, when you're that superior a talent compared to most of your contemporaries, it's kind of hard not to want to ISO. But why do people think? I think it's just wishful thinking. We'll see. Maybe it's like one of those things where the sports medicine has increased since the last major rupturing of Kobe or Chauncey Billups, that they've gotten better about reattaching and they figured out better rehab. And because his diet is even better than guys' diets from 5 to 8 years ago or even 10 years ago, all the little things perhaps they're banking on. I don't know. I hope he comes back. Even if he comes back 95%, that's still all-star and probably all NBA. 90% is still all-star. Not sure about all NBA, borderline, but his name recognition, if he's doing 90% and the narrative of he just came back from the Achilles tear, means he's all NBA. If it's like 75, 80%, he'll make all-star. He won't make all NBA. But If it's at 75 and 80, then you could talk yourself into, well, this is the first season back. Next year now with another 82 games under his belt. I'm more intrigued with, why does he think it's going to work with Kyrie? Because I don't know. Kyrie is his mind works in a unique way. So we'll see. I mean, the marriage of those two with Steve Nash, because I think Steve and KD have a kinship. I don't know about him and Kyrie. Very well could be. But I know Steve was going to Warriors practices, and he's talked about, Kevin Durant before this and their relationship. So that seems like it's on terra firma. The Kyrie is the biggest question. Well, that question mark, and then what the team does surrounding. Who do they keep? Spencer Dinwiddie's gone, but the rest of it, I don't know. So Jeff Knutson writes, is there anything LeBron could do at this point in his career to cement GOAT, or will it always be seen as number 2 to Jordan? Well, for an entire generation, he's number 1. The Last Dance may have educated some of that younger generation as to why Jordan is held in such high esteem by those of us that were watching the game before them. Could he end up as GOAT? Yeah, it's completely conceivable. Look, if he wins this year and he gets finals MVP, all the naysayers, and I was partly one of them, saying, do it in the West. And he did it in the West. And it's not like it was some cakewalk of a schedule throughout the regular season and then coming into the playoffs. Although the playoffs in the West, there were no cakewalks. That Portland team could score lights out. Their defense is completely suspect, but they could score. Although Dame being hurt and the effort as a team as a whole to try and make up for Dame being out was admirable. But then after that, like, look at that Nuggets team that routed the superior Clippers team, and superior just on paper, they have all the talent, but 3-1 to come back. And then the Lakers handled their business. Now you could say that the Nuggets were tired. They had just had 2 back-to-back 7-game series. And because this is a condensed schedule, it's every other day. And even on young legs, that's asking a lot. I mean, that first 7-round series when Scott Van Pelt was talking to Jamal Murray after the game, and that game 7 was sloppy as shit because both sides were tired. All kinds of shots were hitting the front of the rim because nobody had any legs. And it was a low-scoring affair compared to the 40 and 50-point scoring barrages from Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell. But Scott Van Pelt said, hey, are you, ready for the Clippers in 2 days? And he's like, 2 days? And he's 23. If anybody should be able to bounce back, it's somebody like that. But doesn't matter. They're playing with all sorts of confidence, and the Lakers handled them like it. So if LeBron takes a championship this year and then manages to maybe, if they get back-to-backs, and if he gets a three-peat, let's just start there. If he gets a three-peat, then it's going to be super interesting. A back-to-back, I think, makes back-to-back, and he's the best player again on the team, through the regular season. He's their most important player. Given all the records that he holds, given his grasp or his clutch on the imagination of a couple generations of basketball fans, at that point, it'll be, if you make it next year, that's 11 finals. And if he makes it the year after that, that's 12 finals. That'll be 11 finals in 16 years and 12 and 17. And he'll be 36 and 37 years old doing this. I mean, it's going to be difficult. To me, the GOAT is one game you got to win. It's the Space Jam shit. Aliens are coming. One game. Who's your draft pick? It's Jordan for me. Because unfortunately for LeBron, I've never seen Jordan lose in a game, in a closeout game. Like, he's never been to a game 7 in the finals. So it's just the way it worked out. I remember once doing one of these shows and somebody was like, how come no one gives Jordan any shit for never having won a game 7 in the finals? It'd be like, he never had to. He closed out those teams before. That's the point. So it's because of that. Like, those early years where, like, against Dallas, him just no showing. And against the Spurs, like wilting against the Spurs. It just, I saw LeBron do that. And to be the GOAT for me, it needs to be your teammates didn't show up, but you did. And eventually LeBron got to that. Eventually LeBron got to the point where it's just like, you know precisely what you're going to get from him every game now. So the weird thing is, if you cleaved off those first few championship runs and just started when he wins the first championship, I think it's a tougher discussion for GOAT status for me. It's like, shit, man, LeBron now, it's like, look at this years of just superior ability. But because I have the early examples, like, it took a long time for my perception to not be colored by that. So, all right, well, we're at an hour and 2. I think that's enough basketball talk for today. Well, let's see. The way it works out right now, Sunday is the next game. And then I'm trying to see, is it just straight to Tuesday at that point? Yes, it is. So maybe stay tuned to Twitter. Maybe I'll do one of these on Monday as an emergency one, because at that point we'll have 3 games under our belt. Yeah, maybe I'll do a Monday one. I'm not sure. But the thing is, I can't do it at noon on Mondays. I'd have to do it later in the day because I already have something going on at noon. So look for it on Twitter. I'll put the announcement on Twitter as to whether or not I'm going to do one on Monday. It really comes down to, I mean, if this is, how can I not though? Because then the series goes, all right, so I'll do one on Monday. We're doing a show on Monday. I just changed it all. We're doing a show on Monday. Look for it to go live sometime around, I would say 2 p.m. on Monday. So 2 p.m. here. For those listening, it'll be up on the feed probably around 4-ish. So there you go. That is it for Dropping Dimes today. Thank you to everybody that joined me in the chat over on the side. It's always great to see, all of your guys' thoughts, and I thoroughly appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. The season is drawing to a close. I will do some stuff in the off season, but the primary push was for the bubble and to close out the season. I wanted to at least get this, to finish out the season because we'd spent so much time together. But that's it for today's Dropping Dimes. You can follow me anywhere at Matt Nost. If you're watching this, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. If you're a podcast listener, I'd appreciate a rating on whatever your podcast feed of choice is. And I know I've got quite a few out there, and iTunes is my primary, Apple Podcasts. And there's, it's like 14, 15, 16 reviews. Guys, there's 30, 40 times that in downloads every week or every episode right now. Let's get those reviews up a little bit, because that only helps me and it gets me onto the sports trending page. And I thoroughly appreciate it. Just because I love talking basketball and get more people in here. And then also I can reach out to more guests and whatnot. Although twice a week, I kind of like these Fridays, just chill with you guys, because it takes trying to get 2 guests a week is not impossible, but it's just juggling people's schedules is a bit of a pain in the ass. So anyway, that's it. I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the game tonight and on Sunday. And I'll check back in with you live on Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here at, you can go to youtube.com/Dropping Dimes. And you can find the channel over there and subscribe to it and whatever else. But that is it for today's show. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys on Monday at 2. Adios.